This is Judith Skillman, and the title of this poem is also the first line. "Come this way," he said, and I followed him through a clearing, along a well-worn path to avoid descending large lava rocks we would have to switch back our way down. Basalt so slippery, a misstep could mean a broken ankle. I didn't question the word shortcut. It meant a kind of reprieve from, a nuanced name for the kind of invalid I'd become, one who couldn't, even with hiking boots, climb down a hill alone. A Jill who would come tumbling after, a Jack who'd hold my hand, steady my body against his own, navigate terrain once ocean floor, pillow basalt. Where before we'd slowly and steadily seen the town come into focus, its churched roofs and alleys, Pio Point on the other side, the sky emblazoned with the same sun as always, only hotter. This time we would bypass any chance of lost footing by continuing on. Short was good. Short meant shorter. Instead, the trail grew down and up terrain engineered for bikes and horses, through birch and alder and fir, on until, even without my saying, he knew how tiring the weight of pain in hip and sacrum, bulging discs, this appendage called body. He knew a little less than before about why and how difficult a simple August day away from home could be. As far as we'd come, I felt the sweating trees and thirsted for the end of things, though perhaps he didn't know that much, how pain changes a person, wrapped like ivy or morning glory around the cord called spine. The story never ends. It goes on even now that shortcuts become a joke between us, one he uses affectionately, as if to tell me it doesn't matter how long the thing will hold out. Infrastructure of what never had nerves before, walking upright, walking onward into the state we call unknown, are not having a map of the future, perhaps enough to keep the road to home whole. Well, actually, it's pretty straightforward in this poem. We were in a different place east of the pass. I live on the western side of Washington State, so we went over the pass where we have a little pied-à-terre, a little place we stay sometimes. And we were, just as the poem unfolds, we were hiking. And what inspired it really was the fact that I was somewhat taken aback and in shock about the state of my body. So that inspired me to write the experience of, it's somewhat traumatic, I suppose. My life and everyone's life is traumatic in different ways, but my particular cross that I have to bear is that I do have a damaged back from being hit as a pedestrian in 1982. I would say it's the natural world that has inspired me to write poetry, starting with the stars. My father was an astronomer and showed us the stars, and just the wonder of the earth and the world, and the way the organic imagery that nature gives us. It's just right there. Yes, and it is something that I feel like it originates in the body and in the mind. Sometimes there'll be a phrase or some of the poets that I really admire and have learned from will talk about listening to music, and I also try to play music. So it's a cadence or a dream even that presents you with what some people might call like an earworm, which is a bad, has maybe bad connotations, but something you can't shake off, and then you feel rather driven to get it down on paper. So it is very, you're right. I mean, that's a very difficult question to answer in full, but it's an urge to, and I can't quote Frost or whomever said it, to, translate our experience as we look back at the past into the present, and to be with that experience. Well, that's a good question too, because I certainly have days on which I'm laboring against words and not with them. I would say to write a better poem, you have to seize on the part that is working, and it takes time and distance. So you have to take off your sensorial hat, your editing hat, as it were, and really let yourself be in that experience that you are translating with words, and not censor yourself and become a mad person and just write, and then look back on it maybe a couple days later or a week later and see what leaps out from that experience, and then build on that. That's not to say that some poems don't just write themselves, and the one that I'm grateful to you for taking in Breath and Shadow, it sort of wrote itself, but that's a rare occurrence. More often it takes time. I love reading poetry, and I think when I read poetry, I try to suspend my disbelief, which is probably a cliche phrase, but I try to know a little of the context of the poet, and especially if it's a translation, know where they're writing from and what language the original is in, and then to go along with the images, even if I don't understand them consciously, and especially if I don't understand them consciously, because the best poems for me are those that move one, or they move me when I read them. They move the reader so emotionally that you feel like something like wind has come through and just freshened up your body, and freshened up the room. And you may not understand intellectually all the connections, but that's why what's great about the written word is you can go back and back and back and understand more with each reading. It's kind of like looking at a painting, I suppose. Oh yeah. I would at this point I just would turn to some older work. There's a poem called My Grandmother's Waltz, and it is not on the subject of my own personal suffering, thank God, because some of them are. But this is more about my heritage and how I grew up, not knowing why certain things were done, and it was because of relatives that had fled Germany and Poland due to the persecution in the Holocaust. So the poem is in my book, The Truth About Our American Births, which was published by Shanti Arts in 2020. So that's like a way of, giving a little plug. But I felt like that poem, it's in terza rima, so it's a form, and it was challenging to write in that form, but I felt like it was also very rewarding. If Janae Bauer is listening, I'd love to say hi to her, and her book, The Ekphrastic Writer, which is about writing about visual art and writing poems, prose, and other forms. So, hi, Janae.